BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Thursday, and on Thursdays this year, I've been doing a regular segment about the disappearance of Donna Lass from 1970. Donna Lass disappeared on September 6th of that year. She was working the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino, where she worked as a nurse in the first aid station. Donna disappeared in the early a.m. hours of September 6th, at some time between 1:40 a.m. and 2 a.m. Since I've been doing this series, I believe that maybe around 1:45 would be the closest estimation, but it could always be a minute or two in either direction, or maybe closer to 1:50. It is an unsolved case, therefore we do not have the specific answers. But before we continue any more in this episode, in the past, this show has been available on LaunchPad 1, a site where you can download the audio version of Black Box Online Radio as a podcast. However, this episode that you're listening to and watching right now is going to be exclusively available on YouTube because it's going to be very visual. I wanted to talk about some material that I hadn't covered before, but expand upon the previous material at the same time. And in this episode, I wanted to entertain the possibility that Donna Lass was murdered and her remains had been discarded and submerged underwater in the waters of Lake Tahoe, very precisely, because the last time I talked about this subject, I kept trying to say buried at sea, but buried at the lake. Her remains would be submerged into the waters of Lake Tahoe. I got on this subject because I was interviewing Ann Penn on the Zodiac Killer channel, the Interviews with the Experts series. I'm also the host of that program, and she brought forward her theory about the disappearance of Donna Lass, that yes, indeed, the Zodiac Killer abducted Donna Lass on September 6 of 1970 and took her body to a place in the Lake Tahoe region called Rubicon Point. Now, in the past, I thought that if Donna Lass had been abducted, which I do believe she was, and she had been murdered, which I do believe she was, then the perpetrator would have buried her body in the mountains surrounding Lake Tahoe. And even the History Channel show The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer explored that possibility. They brought cadaver dogs out into the mountains, and they say they have possibly located human remains, but it doesn't seem like they were anywhere close to identifying the location of Donna Lass's resting place. But I really wanted to look more into this possibility because Donna Lass was working in State Line, Nevada, which is the Lake Tahoe area. Her residence is in present-day South Lake Tahoe, California, but in 1980 they redrew the Nevada-California border, but her residence, the Monteverde apartment complex on Pioneer Trail Road, is currently in the state of California. Both California and Nevada are on Lake Tahoe. I mean, there's a California side and a Nevada side. So that's what we're going to do right now. But I also want to remind you guys that this is an unsolved case. I do not have all the answers. And I did an episode recently called A New Zodiac Killer Discovery, and I received a comment today, and someone said, "This title's misleading. There's no new development added." And I was like, yeah, I expected some type of comment like that. And I checked. And it turned out it was not on any Zodiac Killer episode at all. It wasn't on the New Discovery episode or anything of the sort. It was on the episode that I did about the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, the 2021 update. Once a year on this channel, and I do mean it, once a year, I do an episode in memory of Brandon Lawson, who disappeared in 2013, driving from San Angelo, Texas, toward Abilene, Texas. And his truck ran out of gas. He was parked on the side of the road. He made a 911 call, which is now very famous on the internet. And it is one that the online sleuths absolutely cannot figure out. But people are still trying to make sense of that mystery. And I was just shocked that someone was mad and upset that I didn't solve the case. I mean, how exactly, what exactly is your metric that you're using for what should go into a YouTube video that's discussing an unsolved case? It's like, hey, you didn't provide all the answers to the mystery. That's misleading. But when I do those updates, the 2020 update, the 2021 update, it is meant to talk about the news coverage, the posts that have been put out on Facebook by the pages that follow the cases, to talk about any type of coverage that has come out during that year. And excuse me if I'm unable to just wave my magic wand and provide the answers that people have to all these mysteries. What happened to Brandon Lawson? What happened to Donna Lass? What happened with the Zodiac killer mystery? Who was the Zodiac? I wish it were that simple, but I'm afraid it's not. It really is a step-by-step process. And with the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, I was just running my mouth on the internet for months back in 2018 and some into 2019 as well, where I just said, okay, here's what I think happened, and every single thing that I said was wrong. So with the Disappearance of Donna Lass series that I've been doing here, it's been much more about examining different sides of the information as opposed to just watching 10 YouTube videos and giving a response to it. However, I'm hoping that any type of media, any type of writing, any type of theory will make its way into these Donna Lass episodes. But to look at the locations around Lake Tahoe that could possibly have been a resting place for Donna Lass, and I also want to remind you guys that I talk about what I said during the Rubicon Point episode, where Ann Penn informed me that the waters around Rubicon Point can get up to 800 feet in depth. However, when I was on Google, it turns out the deepest parts of Lake Tahoe are actually even over 1,600 feet in depth, 1,600 feet deep plus. So very, very deep waters. And if Anne's analysis and her research is correct, then she said that human remains would be mostly very well preserved if they are down that deep, because there aren't going to be any things like currents. I mean, there aren't even going to be dealing with predatory lake creatures that are going to ravage the body and so on. So there could be very well preserved remains if anyone is actually able to obtain them. But 800 feet, 1,600 feet, as someone who isn't even a scuba diver but has watched National Geographic and the Discovery Channel a fair bit, I can tell you those are not easy dives, and people do not do them very regularly. But let's look at some places where Donna Lass may have ended up. Firstly, if somebody did indeed abduct her in State Line, Nevada, then one of the closest places on Lake Tahoe is an area called Zephyr Cove. And I learned about this one because of a group on Facebook called Lake Tahoe Photography. I was reading up about Donna Lass every week doing this segment here, and the algorithms of the internet just kept encouraging me to look at more and more Lake Tahoe related materials. And there was this group on Facebook that was sharing all kinds of photos of the Lake Tahoe area, and it turns out Zephyr Cove is very close to State Line, Nevada, where Donna Lass worked. Again, in the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino, and she worked at the nurses' station, which, as I understand, based on the writings that people have shared, it wasn't somewhat of a secluded part of the hotel, just down a hallway, like down a corridor by itself, and it would not have been very well monitored if somebody were to have indeed abducted Donna Lass. But many people also think that Donna was lured into the parking lot, lured out of a service exit or something by the hotel. I've even talked about that in a previous episode. However, looking at Zephyr Cove, the first point that I thought was there are there's a very, very strong incline in the, I guess, the lake floor, for lack of a better term, where it appears that the lake is getting deeper and deeper as it goes off of the coast. And I think that is something that is important to note, that this would be a location that a person would use to discard human remains. There's also a very solid boating dock, and that's how I actually decided to start Googling these things, because I was looking at that photo of Zephyr Cove and I saw the boating dock, and instantly I was thinking, if somebody had access to a boat, Zephyr Cove would be a place where they would head out, even if it's something very small, something like a rowboat. Donna Lass disappeared at between 1:40 and 2 a.m. Now, what happened with her after that is a pure mystery. There really aren't a lot of strong leads. I mean, was she held hostage at a place for a certain amount of time? Was she murdered in the hotel and then her remains were transported out after she had already passed away? It is an unsolved case. But as far as discarding her remains and at at the lake, that is, this would actually be somewhat of a more plausible location in one of the deeper areas outside of Zephyr Cove. Now, I'm not saying I know 100%, but let's look at this one in contrast to a different part of Lake Tahoe, and this one's called Sand Harbor. The majority of the photos in that Lake Tahoe photography group are from this place, Sand Harbor. So I think anyway. I mean, it was very frequently shared, and Sand Harbor seems to be a very picturesque place. I didn't count the number of postings, but there were numerous, numerous, numerous postings of this location, Sand Harbor. So my first note about this one was definitely a more substantial distance from the State Line, Nevada, Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino area where Donna Lass would have worked. But the waters here are just so shallow, even going well into the well well into the foreground, I guess we should say. You see that the rocks are still very, very much visible to the naked eye, and that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys about this. It would be purely implausible for somebody to go to a place like Sand Harbor and to try and discard human remains there, especially if it wasn't a calculated attack, and that something may have happened to Donna that wasn't even meant to have been a murder. It doesn't have to be an opportunistic serial killer. It doesn't have to be a calculating serial killer like the Zodiac. There could have been some type of altercation that took place, and somebody panicked. They didn't know what to do. It appeared that Donna Lass was either murdered already, dead already, severely injured already, and they tried to move her remains to a dump site. And it sounds absolutely saddening when you talk about human life like that, but I do believe that Donna Lass was murdered very close to the time of her disappearance. Now, I was messing around on Google and I found a location called Glenbrook. Glenbrook is on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, and this one stood out to me in particular because it's right off of the road. It has not only very easy auto access, but very easy boat access. And if this rock formation, like this parking lot right on the water, existed back in 1970, then this would be an even more suitable location than Zephyr Cove to discard human remains, because it really appears that it has absolutely everything someone would want. Like, you can have a boat there, and you can also bring a car extremely close to the boating area in a secluded way. It's not a marina. It's not any type of well occupied place, especially if they were to do this at night. And I think it almost would go without saying that if somebody were trying to discard Donna Lass's remains in Lake Tahoe, they probably were doing it at night. And imagine someone has a boat out there, and then they're probably just gonna set it up like they're doing some type of nighttime fishing, even if they're moving a large object onto a boat. People do that all the time. So when I was interviewing Ann Penn, she did say that the police never interviewed Donna Lass's boyfriend. And when I interviewed Mike Morford on the same series, the Zodiac Killer Channel's Interviews with the Experts series, I invite you guys to like and subscribe to that channel as well. He said that there actually was more than one guy. Donna was just casually dating during the summer of 1970, which she had every right to do. So there could have been some type of jealousy going on or some type of conflict. And I think it was Classic Chevy Cat in the comment section who said that just because someone is dating, it doesn't mean that they are in a relationship. Someone may not have accepted the result and done something very horrible to Donna because of that, which could tie into a jealousy motive or some type of power tripping motive. And I do have to just keep insisting this until we find out where Donna's remains are and her cause of death and what could have happened to her. All of these possibilities are still right out there. It doesn't mean that she was even murdered. There could have been some type of accidental death and somebody discarded her remains because they didn't want to get people to get the wrong idea. Imagine someone's in an argument and then some type of injury happens to somebody that wasn't even planned, and anything you're thinking of is possible, really. It's an unsolved case. But Glenbrook, I think, would be a very, very suitable location. I mean, this seems like something that a local to the area would think about if they were trying to get easy auto access and easy water access. Glenbrook is really up there. When I was looking at the maps of Lake Tahoe, and I'm a West Virginian, as you guys know, so I have to rely on secondhand sources, outside eyes, getting a view of the game, so to speak. I can't really just go out and walk and visit these locations. So I was looking at the map and I saw this place, Marlette Lake, and you can see from the maps of Lake Tahoe that there are many small bodies of water surrounding the lake. You got streams, rivers, Fallen Leaf Lake, and there's McKinney Bay, and then there are all kinds of streams and rivers that feed into this Emerald Bay, and it looks like they even have Cascade Lake, which is very small. But there's Marlette Lake on the Nevada side as well, and Marlette Lake is one that I got curious about, so I decided to pull that up on Google and see what that looks like, and I was quite surprised. Not only is it a more substantial distance from the Sahara Tahoe in State Line, Nevada than Glenbrook or Zephyr Cove. The waters looked extremely shallow. But you might be like, well, how do you really know? You're just looking at one photograph. How do you really know the waters are shallow? So I decided to Google the depth of Marlette Lake, 45 feet. Marlette Lake covers 381 surface acres and has a maximum depth of 45 feet. So, again, anyone with any familiarity with this area would not do something like that. So we can narrow down some possibilities about where Donna Lass may have ended up. And anyone would not try to go in that direction. They would most likely head out into the massive waters of Lake Tahoe, 1,600 feet deep versus 45 feet deep. And you don't even need Google back in 1970, as you can see from the photo that was posted here. Very, very shallow waters. Now, there are numerous places all around the California side and the that I haven't talked about too much in this one, but I really have to insist that if someone is in a very panicked, rushed, hurried state, or they simply just do not want to bring Donna's remains with them for an extended period of time, I would expect that her body was transported to an area on the Nevada side. I don't know that 100%. I mean, I just think that that is something that would make sense to me. As far as Donna Lass ending up in a grave on land, the mountains of Lake Tahoe would provide an equally secluded way of discarding her remains. There are even places on these California Nevada maps that are just referred to as desolation wilderness. And part of me is like, I absolutely have to visit them before I die. New bucket list item. Just explore Lake Tahoe on both the California side and the Nevada side. But in regards to Donna Lass, there is a belief that Donna's body may have been buried at Donner Pass. This is what they talked about on the show, The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer, or yes, yeah, that one on the History Channel, about how Donna Lass, Donner Pass, there could be a connection. And I'm not a fan of that program, as you heard in a previous episode in this series, but I do give them credit for trying to cross off some things from the list, to cross every T, to dot every I. You might as well investigate it if it's an unsolved case. It could be possible. And in a previous episode, I did pull up that it is a 1 hour and 33-minute drive from the Hard Rock Hotel, which is the new name of the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. It has since been renamed the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino of Lake Tahoe. 1 hour and 33 minutes in the car. It is 60.4 miles. Again, I get that there's this name connection, Donna Lass, Donner Pass, but you have to drive 1 hour and 33 minutes when places like Zephyr Cove and Glenbrook are so much more easily available. And if you go on using Highway Route 50 and then over to Route 93, there is a 1 hour and 23-minute drive that you can use, and getting on Highway 80, and that will save 7 minutes, 1 hour and 23 minutes, and that brings the distance down to 59 miles. It's the same story. I mean, the only reason that somebody would discard her body in Donner Pass is if they actually did want to leave some type of clue or message. I'm just not seeing it. I just think that that is purely impractical behavior. And I need to say it for the 100th time. I don't know what happened to Donna Lass. I do not know that her remains were discarded in Lake Tahoe, but I'm presenting this to you as a what if. And Zephyr Cove and Glenbrook seem like very suitable locations that any type of perpetrator would have used. I wish I had the money to get some type of nautical investigation team, or pay for some diver to go down and explore with whatever type of forensic equipment you would need, but until then, it's just exploring the ideas. But what really happened to Donna? Was this a crime committed by the Zodiac Killer, who would then go on to send the Donna Lass postcard? More and more, I lean toward the angle of this was somebody very close to her, in her inner circle, had nothing to do with the Zodiac Killer mystery. Most of us have learned about Donna Lass because of the Zodiac Killer connection, but the boyfriend angle, or this guy that she was dating who may not even have been a boyfriend, whoever he is, and it seems like those police files are almost impossible to bring forward to the general public. Whoever this guy was, he's looking guiltier and guiltier by the day, more and more guilty as we speak. But also, there could be an employee of the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino who knew some ins and outs of the location. And I really didn't want to say this in the past because I have absolutely no idea that this is correct. But in terms of speculation, why not somebody like a security guard? Why not someone like a security guard who's going to know all about surveillance? A security guard at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino whose job is to monitor the area, who's going to be patrolling up and down, and is going to know about, oh yeah, behind this door, nobody's going to be watching at this time, or behind that door, there's a clear shot to the parking lot that's not going to be monitored at 1:40 to 2 o'clock in the morning. Someone who's going to have that type of familiarity. And other people brought it to my attention that it could be a maintenance man, a custodian. They're also going to have this type of knowledge and thought process. Yes, yes, yes. I completely agree. And without actually being able to obtain those police files, there's a lot of guesswork that's going on. But this episode was mostly meant to talk about the possibility of if Donna Lass had been buried in the waters of Lake Tahoe, then where would she have ended up? Zephyr Cove and Glenbrook seem like the most likely destinations because when I pulled up that map of the road leading to Donner Pass, there are so many more plausible, likely, useful, practical locations to hide someone's body. There is no reason for a perpetrator to make that 1 hour and 30-minute drive to Donner Pass unless it had significance to the killer, but this Zodiac connection is looking less and less likely. I mean, all of these places where they could hide her body, and they would know that she wouldn't be found immediately, and she hasn't been found for 51 years. So, I believe in every fiber of my being that Donna Lass was murdered in 1970, but her remains have never resurfaced. We do not know that as a fact. And I was talking to Mark Hewitt about this on the Zodiac Killer channel, and he said, we don't even really know if Donna Lass was murdered. And that's completely true. I mean, it is an unsolved case. We don't have any idea what happened to her. And I find that this is something where I'm almost hitting the wall in terms of investigating. Perhaps I could talk to some more people. I can definitely read more about the disappearance of Donna Lass. However, I find that most of the written material that is available on the subject is hitting the same wall that I am. Donna vanished into thin air on September 6th of 1970, and it just turns into this what-if game. Yes, we can play the fact-based speculation card, but it's just a different type of what-if. Now, Mike Morford is planning to release a new series about the disappearance of Donna Lass, and he's conducted at least one interview with someone very close to her, and he will try to reveal some new information, and that is going to be absolutely excellent. And I also recently interviewed Howard Davis for that program. He's the author of the Zodiac Manson Connection, and he believes that Donna Lass was abducted by the Zodiac Killer. Not only that, but by his suspect, Bruce Davis. And Howard Davis is someone who has investigated the disappearance of Donna Lass a lot. In our interview, we didn't get to discuss that particular aspect of the case too much. We definitely did some. And he says that he believes Bruce Davis was working in the South Lake Tahoe area, doing even work as a bar boy for some period of time around that time of 1970. I'm very skeptical of all of that. However, I also do not believe that there's any way to connect Bruce Davis to any of the crimes. And I think that Howard Davis did make a big contribution, being the person who is credited as obtaining the Donna Lass poster, which contains the Donna Lass code, and it seems like that was not the creation of the Zodiac Killer, but that's maybe even one of the earliest even origins of that Donna Lass code. And I talked about it in a previous episode, and a likely solution is Beware I am stalking you, Donna Lass, done in a substitution cipher way. And it's actually Beware I am stalking ooh with like OO and an unknown symbol, but that's simply a mistake of the cryptographer. One of the sad things about investigating the Zodiac Killer mystery is you often encounter the theory that some people believe that someone is creating materials to connect a case to the Zodiac Killer mystery because they want a different crime solved, even though they don't believe it's Zodiac related. They just want to draw other people into the mystery because they hit that wall in their research and or the investigation, and that's why people fabricate these type of cards. Sometimes it could be to draw the Zodiac Killer out and baiting him into creating something that might reveal something about his identity. On the other hand, it's just getting more exposure for a mystery that they believe needs to be solved or something. something like a family member trying to get more people to look at a case because they want to find out what happened to their relative, and they just aren't getting answers from the local authorities. All right, let's do it on a national, if not international level. So all of that has been said about the disappearance of Donna Lass. The Donna Lass postcard was fabricated for that reason, and the Donna Lass poster and code were created for that reason. Just getting more people to examine the case of Donna Lass, and on this channel it has worked. And part of me really wishes that the waters of Lake Tahoe could be more closely examined, perhaps at some time in the future. But what do you think about the idea that Donna Lass was abducted, murdered on September 6th of 1970, shortly after her disappearance, and then the killer drove her body to a place on the Lake Tahoe shores and used a boat to go out into the water and discarded her remains, particularly at Glenbrook or Zephyr Cove, or the two places that I talked about. But what do you think about that? Or do you think it's more plausible that somebody would try and drive into the mountains to discard human remains? I mean, I know I'm asking you to put yourself in the mind of the killer for a second, but this is a far-off corner of YouTube where those types of mental exercises are purely welcome, even if it's not a perfect science. What do you think happened, and what do you think about those possibilities? Because something happened to Donna, something happened to her, and even though I said she vanished into thin air, that's just an expression. There's a definitive answer about what happened to Donna Lass back in 1970, and I would love to read your comments down below, and as always, you can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram. There are links to that in the description box. There is also the Teespring page, which features some wonderful merchandise. Remember, being weird is not a crime. And you can go over to Amazon.com and have a look at my book, Killer on a White Horse, a novel murder mystery inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is totally fictional. And I will see you over on Instagram. Oh, one more thing, though. You can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. That is in the description box as well. This time, I will see you over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.